Welcome back. As you know, I am Eli, the computer guy, here for your daily dose of the roars as we scream about the stupid stuff going on in the world of technology. Do remember I do these videos in order to support silicondojo.com, free hands-on technology education in Durham, North Carolina. We have a class coming up on computer vision, AI computer vision, using a model called Moondream. Next week, we have another class coming up on pushing AI to the edge with Raspberry Pis in the beginning of January. If you're interested in these types of classes, take a look at silicondojo.com to see what our schedule is. If you want to support free education, there's a donor box link down below. And with that, I don't know. Oh no! Chinaman's gonna kill us all! Was that good enough? Was Mr. Trump happy? Was Mr. Trump happy with my reaction about the Chinaman? Because that's the important thing. The important thing we have to understand is Chinaman scary. Chinaman scary, right? AI, more dangerous than nuclear weapons. Chinaman, more dangerous than AI? Sure, what the fuck? Put those things together. Put that as a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and you have the end of my civilization. So the latest thing, this is kind of curious that this is coming out right now, because it's actually pretty stupid. Like, it's weird, because, like, this is the kind of story that's going to come out. People are going to like, yeah, look, China needs our AI. And you're like, but it's from May. It's from May. It's been a while. So anyways, one of the things to think about whenever these news pieces come out is there's a date on when this comes out. So this is from December 9th. I do believe it's December 9th. Yeah, it's December 9th today. Anyway, so this came out today. The article came out today. But what they're talking about basically happened back in May. It actually happened May and previous to that. So again, what is the value of this information now? I think it's just kind of interesting to talk about, basically kind of in that context, right? When we're in this whole anti-China thing, when the Trump administration is really trying to lie to the American public and tell them that China really has to have our artificial intelligence. Stories like this coming out from the government basically it's good for propaganda effect, right? We told you that China desperately needed our stuff. Look, we arrested people illegally selling our stuff to China, ergo, China needs us. You're like, yeah, but that was May. That was May. Anyways, U.S. uncovers scheme to reroute NVIDIA GPUs worth $160 million to China despite export bans, right? And think about that. U.S. uncovers scheme. They did. In May. Anyways. U.S. authorities announced Tuesday that they have shut down yet another China-linked smuggling network that trafficked or attempted to traffic more than 160 million in export control NVIDIA AI chips, right? U.S. authorities announced Tuesday. So this is Tuesday? Oh, maybe they announced it today. So basically they announced today. They announced December 9th that they have shut down yet another China-linked smuggling network. When you hear those words, that sounds very current, doesn't it? According to a press release from the U.S. Attorney's Office, 2 businessmen were taken into custody while a Houston-based company and its owner have already pleaded guilty to chip smuggling as part of a wider investigation. The case comes as Washington steps up its enforcement of export controls aimed at curbing China's access to advanced AI technologies, including NVIDIA's GPUs, right? So we are having to step up our enforcement. Look, what we're doing is not working. In May. The operation, dubbed Operation Gatekeeper, exposed efforts to funnel cutting-edge AI chips with military and civilian applications. Again, there's this whole safety thing. It could be used for the military. To entities that could undermine U.S. national security. You'll notice this. It's always jingoism, right? It could. There is the possibility it could undermine our national security, right? You know. Sending our soldiers off to fight in illegal wars, having them get seriously injured, and then not properly funding their treatment, that has no ramifications to national security. But China getting their hands on GPUs, that's going to be the death of our society. Officials said Hsu and associates had exported or attempted to export at least 160 million worth of NVIDIA H100 and H200 GPUs between, and this is the interesting thing, October 2024 and May 2025. So in December, they're announcing the scheme that they uncovered from, back in the spring. His operation allegedly falsified shipping documents to misclassify the GPUs and hide their true destinations, including China, Hong Kong, and other prohibited locations. Investigators traced more than 50 million in funds originating from China to help fund this scheme by Xu and How Global. In a statement shared with CNBC, an NVIDIA spokesperson said that export controls remain rigorous and that, this is interesting, this is something you should think about, quote, even sales of older generation products, fine, or secondary market are subject to strict scrutiny and review. So this should be something that if you're a decision maker in your technology company and you're trying to deploy artificial intelligence, AI, this is something you might want to figure out what your risk here is. So as I've talked about before, right, whenever you're deploying AI, when you're trying to figure out, right, there's the point everybody knows about when you start doing the massive scale out. But before the massive scale outs, one, you're going to have labs. You're going to have labs to test hardware, test products, figure out what the hell you can and cannot use. And when you have those labs, you're going to buy a whole bunch of different fucking hardware, right? You'll buy AMD, and God help you, you'll buy Intel, and you'll buy many versions of NVIDIA, and maybe you buy somebody else's thing, a TPU or something, right? And you're just testing. You're just testing. Like, how long does a response take? What's the energy consumption? If we scale this to 10,000 of these damn things, what is that going to look like, right? So basically, when you're doing that initial testing phase, you're going to have a lot of hardware that at the end of it is basically going to go in the trash can or get sold or be given to people. So in the onesie twosies, that's probably not a huge deal. If you sell a GPU that winds up in China, one GPU that winds up in China, again, I say it shouldn't be a big deal, but who knows with this administration? Again, remember lawfare. We are in a world where politicians, right, basically believe that when they want to go after you, they will make the law fit what they have stated is your crime. So you send one GPU to China, that might put your ass in jail. But then beyond that, the other thing to be thinking about is once you start scaling up these projects, most of the time you're not going to be deploying. You're not going to be deploying 10,000 or 100,000 GPUs at once, right? You're going to start focusing on the solutions, right? Okay, we're going to try to use this in this particular environment. We're going to take 100 GPUs and we're going to create this AI system, and we're only going to use it for internal. Right? And the thing is, with 100 GPUs, then you've got the network communication going on, again, clustering, all that kind of stuff going on. You got the real power consumption going on. You understand more about latency, that type of deal. And the hope is, when you buy 100 GPUs, you just want to buy 100 GPUs, have everything pass, and then move the fuck on. But maybe it doesn't. Right? Maybe you bought 100 of these GPUs, and for whatever reason, the buffers, the caches, right, aren't what they were supposed to, or it doesn't scale. It doesn't scale the way that you thought it was going to, or whatever else. What if you got 100 GPUs? What if you have 100 GPUs or 200 GPUs, 1,000 GPUs for some of these Silicon Valley companies, and you just simply find that they are not viable, not just for this particular project, but as you go and do testing, you realize there is a better product out there. So we tested with this. This shit's garbage. We're gonna go to the better product, right? That's what we all do. What happens when you have hundreds or maybe even 1,000 or more of these GPUs and you decide to put them on the secondary market, right? You spend a lot of money, right? Even if these GPUs are only the $10,000 version ones, that's $1 million in GPUs. Wouldn't you like to get back $500,000 or $250,000 if you already spent $1 million? So, you tell your facilities person. I mean, think about this, and this is kind of how it works. You tell your facilities person, you tell somebody, like, hey, look, we got a shit ton of this hardware. Get it out. Get us a good value on getting this shit the fuck off our property. Can you imagine if you had the Justice Department coming after you because your facilities guy found somebody to give you a very good price on this used hardware? They packed that shit up, shipped it the fuck out, and didn't think about it. That is one of the things that you should be nervous about. And this is one of the issues. Again, we talk about this in the United States. The problem with false security, right? The problem with the government destroying liberty. The problem of Trump and the fucking Republicans sending jackbooted stormtroopers after the American public for safety, right? When they put a fucking bullet through your head, that's patriotic. When you get a paper cut because of somebody in Africa, oh my God, that's a disaster. Anyways, right? The problem is, right, the more of these laws they put into place, the more people that can get caught up in these stupid laws, and the worse it can be for everybody. And so this actually might be a curious security concern going into the future. If we can take a look at this, prosecutors allege another person Gong used straw purchasers and intermediaries to acquire GPUs by misrepresenting the end customers as being in the U.S. or in unrestricted third countries. Workers at U.S. warehouses would then rebrand shipments under fictitious names and mislabel them as generic parts for exports to China and Hong Kong, according to the case. So anyways, that's basically what's going on right now. $160 million of GPUs were sent to China and other places before May. Before May. But they're announcing it now because it's politically valuable to announce it now. I think the bigger thing for the American public to be thinking about here, and again, really for any technology decision maker, is this whole question. Is it going to be better to send your GPUs to the shredder than try to resell them? Like I remember back in the days with hard drives. I remember when hard drives actually were worth a little bit of money. And there was that whole thing, right? I remember from a security standpoint, people said, look, you need to drill holes in all your hard drives. Look, I remember being there and looking at hundreds of fucking hard drives, right? And these hard drives, worth a couple of dollars, right? If you sell hundreds of them, you're going to get thousands or tens of thousands of dollars, even them being used. And you're being told from a security person that you should drill holes in these damn things. And I remember what that felt like. I remember, and let's be honest. What really happened is you're like, well, okay, we're not going to sell them on the open market, but I also don't feel good drilling holes in them. So they just got shoved in the back of a server room. Piles of hard drives. That's the real world, right? Anyways, I think that's going to be an interesting thing with it. This AI equipment is it going to get to the point that from a risk threshold, it is better to shred NVIDIA hardware than it is to put it on the secondary market? And I'm just gonna go with this for a little second. Like, I've been talking about the whole AI fraud. I've been talking about the AI fraud for a while. That all of this is stupid. All this whole AI bubble is beyond idiotic, right? Almost every big tech company is now talking about putting data centers into space. I cannot over exaggerate how stupid all of this is. And so when you have a $5 trillion company that is desperately trying to prove that they actually have anywhere near that value, forcing hardware to be shredded once a customer is done with it is a hell of a way to boost your sales. Right? They've been talking about these depreciation cycles. And the interesting thing with depreciation cycles, right? So you get hardware, and again, after 3 years, right? After 3 years, hardware is worthless. Right? I have this 2012 MacBook Pro. This is what we use for Silicon Dojo for a lot of stuff. Anyways, and one of the things I talk about is that, again, 2012 hardware works fine for a long time. So one of the interesting things is this whole talk about they're pushing out the depreciation cycle. So it went from 3 years to 4 years to 5 years to 6 years. And so there's a real question, right? Are GPUs good for only 3 years? Are they good up to 6 years? And one of the big things that gets kind of lost in this whole equation is for the initial purchaser, a 3-year depreciation cycle might make sense, right? When you're the Googles of the world, or when you're the cutting edge company in the world, once you can no longer get cutting edge performance out of the equipment, then maybe it leaves your facility. But once it leaves your facility, it then goes onto the quote-unquote secondary market, and other people can purchase that equipment, right? Schools can purchase that equipment to start teaching people how to do artificial intelligence, right? When you think about resource consumption, right, a lot of it is actually a load, what load is on the systems. So if you have millions of users hitting a system, right, the hardware may not be able to keep up. But like if I've got a school, if I've got Silicon Dojo, right, Silicon Dojo, let's say I want to spin up 10 servers so we can actually create like a CUDA cluster or whatever else. Right? Again, what's our load? What's our load? Fucking 20 people in a class. Who the fuck cares, right? So anyways, so I could buy a 3-year-old GPU that still has driver support, still gets the latest software, is still in the modern technology environment. Is just too old for these cutting edge companies to do, and I could put that into my little server room or whatever, so I could teach people, right? You might have. Oh, any type of you might have any type of company out there. You need AI services. You're not going to put those AI services under the load of a public company, so it might be fine, right? So again, we talk about depreciation. When is the end of the useful life for the first purchaser, and when is the end of the useful life for the follow-on purchasers? As I say, this 2012 MacBook Pro is literally sitting on my desk right now because I'm using it. And so one of the things that becomes interesting, right, is if in this AI fraud, you are fucking desperate by hook or by crook to get people to buy more of your product, isn't one of the best ways to do that is to convince CIOs, CTOs, and the rest of them that from a security standpoint, it makes more sense to send their depreciated hardware through a fucking chipper shredder than to try to get a couple of dollars by putting them on the secondary market. Something to think about. Something to make you go, 2025 really does suck. God damn it. 2025 is the worst year. 2025 is the worst year until we get to 2026. Until we get to 2026. So yeah, that is something to consider with what's going on. It's interesting the type of stuff that NVIDIA puts out. And as I say, don't read between the lines. Read what these companies literally are saying, and then just understand what the actual decision-making ramifications might be. I'm sure Jensen Huang would just cry a river if trillions of dollars of GPUs went through a chipper shredder every year or two. Anyways, so what do you think about this? What do you think about the scheme to sell GPUs to China from May? What do you think about it being announced now? Right? What do you think about any of this stuff? Put your thoughts down below. If you like these videos, give us a thumbs up. If not, give us a thumbs down. Do remember I do these videos in order to support SiliconDojo.com, free hands-on technology education in Durham, North Carolina. We're doing a class on computer vision with something called the Moon Dream Model coming up next week. We're having another class on pushing AI to the edge with Raspberry Pis coming up in the beginning of January. If you're interested in those, take a look at our schedule at SiliconDojo.com. If you want to support free education, there's a donor box link down below. And with that, see y'all later.